So I want to make a video today going over some tips and tricks I've learned in the Ultimatum Mode of Ghosts of the Deep over the first couple days of it being out. We're going to show some different clips from stream, we're going to show some loadouts, some just overall ideas, some loadout swaps, some everything you may want to know about this. And again, anything that I've basically learned about the Ultimatum Mode here is going to be in this video. So I'm not going to really talk about the first encounter or the transition area as much. I don't think too many people are really struggling with those. Again, they're not easy, but really the main meat and potatoes are going to be the two bosses, so let's talk about those. So we've done a couple different strategies on Ecthar and tried a couple different things. Now I will say that Winterbite with Titans are definitely a good strat. We definitely used that and it worked quite well. Now again, the thing with certain strategies is you do kind of need pretty specific setups and pretty specific class setups and all that type of stuff, and I try to make things that I do and again strategies that I use be pretty flexible and or at the very least have my ability to be flexible to help any different type of player, whether they're a hunter, they're a titan, they're a warlock, whatever they're bringing in, I can kind of adjust. But anyways, Winterbite is a good strategy. Now that being said, I do feel like one of the best strategies that has been as consistent as possible has been when I've been able to run on Prismatic Warlock. Again, there's other setups. Again, Prismatic Titan can probably do some very similar things. Maybe Strand Titan, Hunters have some different things they can do. But basically having one character or one person on a very heavy focus add clear build is going to be very important here. Because again, like, there's all sorts of talks about, easy 2 phases and potentially even 1 phases here, but the really hard part is getting to damage phase. If you can consistently get to damage phase and stay alive up top, you're not really going to have too many issues with this encounter. Again, like, if you can easily 2-phase, awesome. Again, but that means that a 3-phase should be super duper easy, even if you're lowering damage a little bit. So again, basically what I'm saying here is, for me, I've been loving the Prismatic Warlock build for this encounter myself, and then basically having one teammate on a well, and the third person can kind of be whatever. It is obviously, again, Bolt Charge is really, really good this season. Titans are really, really strong this season. Not a surprise, so very, very nice there. Now I have actually tried again a couple different things. I tried with Lord of Wolves myself, and then I did actually end up switching over to Tractor Cannon, and it does seem to do a nice job of kind of staggering the boss at least decently, going between Tractor Cannon and then just another shotgun. I was using the bait and switch version of the Sundered Doctrine shotgun in this video and in these clips. So again, it's just like a nice little way to get some extra damage. Like, I don't want to sit there tractoring and then doing no other damage. You could probably use like a fusion rifle or something too to add in some damage as well. Again, this was not our highest damage setup. Winterbite definitely seemed to be a little bit better in terms of just total damage and was allowing us to 2-phase, but this was a very, very safe way getting us through the ad clear phases and allowing us to get to damage phases quickly, easily, and cleanly. So again, if you're struggling with the actual survival side of things, I would really highly recommend having at least one person on the team being on some sort of build. Again, I'll show you my build here in a second for Prismatic Warlock, because that's what I'm using. There's other builds out there if you're a Titan or a Hunter, but again, I'll show you what I've got. So as usual in endgame content, I am running 2 separate loadouts, one for the ad clear phase and one for the damage phase. And in terms of weaponry for the ad clear section, I am running the multi-mock that the gunsmith sold a while back, and actually is still selling if you never picked it up, with attrition orbs and kinetic tremors. Basically here, you want to have as many ways to make orbs as possible, and it's going to be because of recuperation. I was going to say, we'll talk about it later, but if you've watched any of my content, or again, know kind of how healing situations and setups can work, recuperation is always a great way to live. Like, so many builds and so many, like, pretty much every single build I would ever use is going to have recuperation in it for the ad clear sections when I'm not running triple surges for DPS. Really, really good mod. Again, so this literally turns in orbs of power into direct health packs. Like, there's so many times where it's like, man, I'm about to die. Find a health orb. If you could get to it before you die, you get that huge chunk of health, and you're alive, right? So again, any way you're going to get orbs, attrition orbs is great. Kinetic Tremors is also great with the knights, the ogres, just kind of the AoE that it can bring. That's another thing for this encounter. AoE is very, very helpful. Anything that's going to like splash and kill enemies together. There's just so many enemies constantly if you're on the ad clear team of 2. Again, there's one person that's going downstairs. They don't got to worry too much about killing stuff, but they got to know the mechanics, of course. But that's at least practicable and really isn't too different, other than you do got to watch your pressure timer, because there's 4 ticks will kill you, so you can survive 3 ticks of like, you know, getting your pressure all the way to 0, and then tick 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 on your like shield. So it is faster to kill you than on the easier modes. But other than that, mechanics are the same. But the ad clear section, you know, much more dense, much more dangerous than normal. So attrition orbs, kinetic tremors, multi-mock here. I am running aberrant action as well. Heal clip, insanely useful towards survival. This will work on any class ever. I would just recommend this weapon, like for sure, for pretty much anyone. You can also run potentially something with overshields, with the new Nightfall rocket sidearm, Lotus Eater, I believe is the name. That could also work, giving you overshields instead of just direct healing. But rocket sidearm with a way to survive, really useful here. Again, I am running tractor cannon as the debuffer. If I was not, I would honestly, it doesn't really matter here. I guess I'd probably run a machine gun. Because again, I would then switch to Lord of Wolves afterwards, which I'll show you here in a second, because it's the same slot. And they're both special ammo. You can absolutely do this. It's not affected by not swap, and it's not really affected by losing ammo either in terms of swapping special to special in the same slot. So you could absolutely do that if this wasn't my exotic. So you could do machine gun and Lord of Wolves here for damage phase. Well, machine gun for the whole time, and then have Lord of Wolves for damage phase. Now, in terms of my kind of ways of surviving, that's going to be through Getaway Artist and Prismatic Warlock. I am running Phoenix Dive. I think Phoenix Dive is outstanding. I love this. Ever since I started really using this, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, I can't ever use Rifts like ever again. Phoenix Dive is just too good. In terms of the Getaway Artist build, I'm sure you guys have seen this a million times, but you are going to want Devour for sure, and you're going to want the Storm Grenade. Well, you have to have the Storm Grenade for sure. You don't technically have to have Bleak Watcher. I like having the double turrets for this build. This is an optional mod, or an optional aspect, but you absolutely have to have Devour. You absolutely have to have Storm Grenade, otherwise Getaway Artist doesn't work. I would highly recommend Arcane Needle as well. It's 3 melees and gives you three attempts at getting Devour versus just 1 in any of the other melees. So Arcane Needle is definitely highly recommended as well. In terms of fragments, there's again probably some different options you can use, but I'll just go over what I'm using. Faceted Protection, I don't think you're not going to run this. I would definitely run this, because this is, you know, always going to be giving you more resistance. Faceted Purpose, really helpful, giving restoration. Facet of Awakening, very helpful as well, giving more elemental pickups, and Facet of Hope, and Facet of Rune. Again, Facet of Rune, honestly, I'm not even sure why I'm running this, I'm not going to lie to you. Facet of Hope, very useful, but Facet of Rune could be some different options now. Again, the solar ignitions, there is potential for solar ignitions, and this actually also does help somewhat in the damage phase. If you're running a solar weapon with Song of Flame, because of the Scorch, and then it'll make the ignitions that the Scorch can bring through Song of Flame bigger to potentially clear out some of the odds around you, again, to help towards survival. But again, if you're running a well, if you're running Song of Flame, and you're running a Barricade, you're probably not going to die during the damage phase. But just another thought there. But this last slot is definitely probably a better option that you may come up with, depending on exactly what you're going to use. As for the mods here, I am running Heavy Ammo Finder and Scout, mostly from my teammates and their machine guns. Honestly, for me, I mean, the Tractor is nice. Now, I will say again, the Tractor Cannon is really good. It can blind the targets, or I don't know if blind is the correct term, but basically it makes the targets unable to damage you other than bosses. So that works for the Knights, that works for the Ogre, stuff like that. So I mean, getting more heavy is useful for sure. You're not going to use like a ton, but you know, getting heavy for you, having your heavy for your team for sure. You're definitely going to want Solar Siphon if you're running the Solar Rocket Sidearm. If you're running something different, obviously pair it with whatever you are going to be killing most things with. I'm just running triple loaders in terms of, again, making sure my rocket sidearm can be reloaded faster. Honestly, I could probably run like 1 kinetic, because I am using the SMG a decent amount as well, but that's what I'm running here. I'm running Scavenger for the... running the wrong Scavenger, that's what I'm doing. I apparently never switched this after trying this build. We want Void, or I mean even Solar. Maybe you could go with either Void Scavenger for more heavy, or you could go with Solar Scavenger to make sure you don't run out of special. But we're definitely don't want Arc Scavenger with no arc weapons. That's not what we want. And in terms of the final section, I do love running Special Finisher. This is great in terms of, again, giving you chances for more special, as well as being able to save your armor charge for damage phase. Again, if you have a well on the team, or if you have another way of getting orbs, or Powerful Friends, Radiant Light, stuff like that, maybe you don't need it, but this is just a nice way to have some guaranteed ways of getting armor charge going into damage phase. As for my resistance mods, there's a lot. I mean, you want arc. There's a lot of arc for sure. Concussive is great, again, both for the splash damages, which there's a lot of different types of splash damage, the moths themselves, the wizards, like everything, like arc and concussive, very good. Solar, the acolyte grenades, and they throw a lot of them, can definitely help there some as well. Again, 2 arc and a concussive, maybe arc, solar, concussive. I've kind of just stayed on the arc, solar, and concussive. It does give diminishing returns running 2 of the same mod, but I could definitely see 2 arc being very useful. Again, for the final boss, that's what we're going to be running, so options there. But now for the damage phase loadout switch, we are using, again, the unvoiced shotgun from Salvation's, or not Salvation, Sunder Doctrine. But really any shotgun can work here. The one benefit of this one is the fact that it does exhaust strong targets, so that will basically reduce outgoing damage to you and your team to anything you're hitting this with. So that is very helpful and towards survival. And again, hits pretty hard, so that's nice. But any shotgun's going to work there. If you're going to do tractor, again, if you're not going to do tractor and you do like a machine gun, you can absolutely just go ahead and do machine gun in Lord of Wolves. But I did find some benefits from tractor cannon, so try both, see what you like. Either one can work, and you're going to want to make sure to pair your surges, of course, with whatever you end up using. So if you're running a void shotgun like I am, that's why I'm running void surges. If you're running Lord of Wolves, you would want solar here, but pair that, again, pair your loaders, again, with the same exact idea in mind. I do like having Radiant Light and Powerful Friends for more guaranteed ways to get my teammates armor charged so that their surges are working. I do switch to double arc resist for this part. I don't really know why I did that. I think it's because I couldn't fit. No, I could fit. Concussive. I don't know. Again, arc, solar, concussive. You want kind of all of them. I'd give to, again, one of each. At least one arc, at least one solar. If you can fit a concussive, awesome. And then I do run 2 time dilations to extend my duration of armor charge to make sure I have that hopefully up for the entire damage phase for sure. 2 things I'd recommend to have if you are going to be running with a Titan, or at least the first one for running with a Titan, make sure you're running Defibrillating Blast. This will help you survive even more. Again, with this setup specifically, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but again, depending on what you actually end up using, this just allows you to heal every time you actually basically expend your bolt charge. Get to 10 and expend it with a barricade. That's going to happen quite often, so you definitely want this, and I would definitely use flashover as well, giving your bolt charge hits more damage. The lightning bolts from bolt charge, more damage. Huge. If you're running any sort of super that's doing damage, limit break, also very helpful. If you're not running a linear, you don't need particle reconstruction. We'll want that later, but for this encounter, you don't need that, so limit break is going to be very nice as well. Other mods of note of basically if you're running the Winter Bite setup, you could also do something with Hold the Line, or if you're any machine gun as well. And then the one you absolutely have to use with Winter Bite is Nobel. Again, we're not really talking super about Winter Bite here because I think it's a good setup, but this one I think is a little bit more flexible and just focuses more on like getting to damage versus like the damage phase itself, because again, I feel like the damage phase itself is not the hardest part of this encounter. Now let's talk a little bit about the final boss, Simmumah. Now this encounter is going to be kind of like the opposite of the last encounter. I feel like the first boss is very much, the more aggressive you play and the more like on top of stuff you can be, and the faster you can play, the better in terms of like clearing ads and staying on top of it. Like a lot of times you're going to want to be using setups that are very much reliant on like the ads kind of fueling your survival and stuff like that. So again, playing aggressive, playing fast is good. Now this encounter is kind of the opposite. The ads are much more spread out. The dangerousness is much more like wide. Again, like the boss itself is very dangerous, but is immune. Like you can't just like kill the boss, right? The moths are very dangerous, but those spawn at specific times, at least for the main ones. And then, the other ones are at least a little less dangerous. We got to kind of keep an eye on those, etc. So it's just a very different pacing encounter. I think that's the big thing to like kind of take in before you even start, is to understand that the pace is going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot slower. So anyways, on that note, definitely been finding good success with 3 linear fusion rifles, mostly Queensbreakers. Now, you'll see I'm running Rat King, and you're going to ask, and people asked all day the last day, of why I was running Rat King. And we're going to show here in a second, but basically, Rat King is extremely useful for one of the most dangerous parts of this entire encounter, and that is grabbing the deep sight. Now, obviously, if you have there's a lot of different ways you can go invisible, in terms of like on void classes with finishers, or if you're just like a hunter in general. Hunters have a bunch of ways. But if you don't have a hunter, or you don't want to use a hunter, or you don't want to be on void, or whatever else, Rat King, literally get a single kill and reload, and you are going to go invisible. So very helpful, and it lasts for 6 seconds, so it's a good amount of time. It doesn't get broken by clicking on the deep sight, so you can literally get a kill, get that reload kind of on the way to the deep sight, hit the deep sight, get out, and very safely every single time. So I've been really, really enjoying that. And again, we'll kind of go over a little bit more here in a second. But again, it's something that's been beneficial. Now, again, you won't be able to run Queensbreaker with that, which I'd recommend if you're not running the Rat King, run Queensbreaker. But if you do have any sort of like similar multi or adaptive burst, that's what they're called, the 3-shot burst linear fusion rifles with some sort of damage perks on it. I really actually like Scintillation. I think the rewind rounds, bait and switch is really good. I considered Briar's Contempt with rewind and surrounded. I just wasn't sure if I'd for sure be surrounded all the time. Again, there's a lot of ads you're probably going to be surrounded, but like I just didn't want to lose out on potentially getting a 0% damage buff if I wasn't surrounded. Now that being said, honestly, the damage phase is kind of wonky anyway. But anyways, you're gonna do just fine with a similar linear and do very similar damage to the Queensbreaker anyway. Now in terms of the flow of the encounter, we like to start basically kind of near the raid flag side and kind of hunker down over here and start by killing the moths from the initial spawn of the boss, as well as the kind of initial ads. There's also going to be 3 boomers around the room. You'll see this first one that I just killed here. There's going to be one at the top of the head, and then one kind of on the far side of the room. If you're looking from the bottom towards the head of Oryx, be on the left side of the room. We like to go around the room and get all 3 of those kind of right at the start. Now again, me as the person with Rat King, I go ahead and go invis and just grab the deep sight and get the heck out. There's no really danger here, and then I can kind of meet my teammates on the other side for this final night. Again, you don't have to do it right away, but if you can, I was just trying to kind of speed it up a little bit without doing it in a way that is, utterly unsafe, because that's definitely true of this encounter. You make a bad move, you get yourself in a bad spot, you're going to die very, very quickly. Again, almost everything is very dangerous in this encounter. The Acolytes are very dangerous. Again, obviously the boss and the moths are very dangerous. So everything's dangerous. Now, do keep in mind, I'm actually going to throw this tip in now. I'm going to show it on screen, but at any point, if you are in big danger, that you can use the water on any of the sections, any of the sides with these water areas that bring you to the side rooms to get away from that danger. That's going to immediately make you invulnerable. There's no damage that can really come in there in any way, shape, or form. Also, don't take the Knight randomly like I did there twice in a row. Like, you're probably not going to survive it in many cases unless you're pretty lucky like I was. Stay a little bit further away from the Knight than that. But again, you can use the water to your advantage in this encounter, and that's actually technically true of last encounter as well. If you really needed to drop down to the water, maybe after a damage phase or whatever. But here, the water is absolutely your friend. You can go in and go out unlimitedly. Obviously, don't stay in the water so long that you're going to die to the pressure. But I don't know why you would do that. Anyways. Again, kind of going through the flow. Now, another tip or another kind of strategy. We try different things in terms of going to the different rooms, right? There's the 3, the wizard, the knight, and the hunter hive champions. Now, you can, if you're super comfortable, all that type of stuff, split up your team doing this. I wouldn't personally recommend it. Obviously for survival purposes, you have all 3 teammates there to kill one of those hive champions. It goes a lot easier in terms of survival, taking them down quicker, etc. Especially the titan and the hunter. The wizard's not so bad, but again, survival is paramount, especially if you're going for gold. 1 death is all you got, so take it a little bit slower. I'd recommend it. Additionally, as you can see here, again, if you're running what I'm running for this, which I'll show that setup kind of at the end here, with speaker sight healing turrets, you can also kind of help your team, even if you're not going to the spot. Again, other option, I can get a kill and I can go to those spots, for looking through the circles safely as well. But again, healing turrets, I can just throw them on spots to help people. Now, again, for the actual going to the side rooms part, I was specifically not grabbing the whatever they're called, finishing the champions and getting the buff there. Again, specifically so I could go out a little bit early, use the Rat King, get invis, grab the deep sight, and then again from there I could be supportive in terms of using my healing grenade if if wherever my teammates needed to go to dunk the buff was dangerous. Like I said, I could throw the healing nade on it kind of as they got there. So that's a really big boon. But again, another reason other than just the safety purpose of going one at a time here, well, actually still multiple reasons. A, you can get more ammo, more chances to get ammo. Everybody's going to the same places. You can get heavy in between rounds. That being said, I don't think you need that much. But the big one is if you split up, then it puts a lot more pressure on the timing, right? So like if I was getting my own buff and I had to like come get this deep sight, get back to the spot I needed to dunk, have to make sure that my other teammates are kind of getting at the same time, or if they're faster than me, then I'm not out here fast enough. Now again, that being said, they could also grab the deep sight, but again, that's adding danger, right? If I'm going to specifically have the setup for wrecking, I can, be the one that's getting into those dangerous spots for deep sight. Now, also notice in between when I'm going in the water, you have a lot of time, right? And they're completely safe in the water. I do switch to a scout rifle in each of these rooms to kind of try to help kill some of these guys from a distance. Again, the wizard was very easy. You can kind of do it from a distance. This guy, now, big tip for both the hunter and the titan champions is that they will, when they pop their super, they're going to use their super 3 times, whether that's the blade barrage, they're going to do that 3 times, or the titan's going to do the shield throw 3 times. Once they do that, they're out of super, and you can go in a lot safer. Because again, if those supers hit you, you're pretty much just like, you're dead. You're insta-dead. You're gonzo. But once they're out of the super, not nearly as dangerous, especially with 3 people, especially if you have, some DR, some healing turrets, but, whatever, if you have the bolt charge barricades, you have the healing turrets, you got, invis on a hunter, whatever you're running, whatever you're bringing, they all bring something to the table that's going to help. But, again, a lot of different ways. Now, biggest thing is, or another big thing, is when the acolytes are kind of being consistently spawning throughout this encounter, and just like ads in general will be consistently spawning throughout the flow. And this is true earlier, and this is also true again later here too. When you're out there with your team, or even if if I'm the one that is trying to go to grab the deep sight, if you see a bunch of acolytes near the deep sight, or if you see a bunch of acolytes near anyone, even in these side rooms, right? Those acolytes, again, very dangerous. Like, obviously the Hive Champion, very dangerous. Obviously the boss is very dangerous. But in Ultimatum, the acolytes are very dangerous. One acolyte could be very dangerous, let alone multiple. So really keep in mind to focus on getting those down, especially in piles, and especially if you should be running something that has some form of, some sort of AoE, the incandescence of the world, stuff like that. So you can kind of take them down a little bit quicker, a little bit easier in piles anyway. So make sure to focus on those. Get those down quick. Now, I'm not going to lie, our damage phases were pretty scuffed in terms of just I don't know, everything. But we did do damage consistently in the middle. Because the positive here is that there will always be one of these, spots that you have to break the boss's shield with, obviously. Or not obviously, but if you didn't already know, this boss's shield breaks really easily now. You don't need Arbalist or anything like that. It happens instantly. But this middle section always has one of these spots, so you can always have that spot because you do still need to stand there to break the shield originally. So this is where we would always set up. Now, the downside here, well, I guess the upside is the boss is pretty close to you, pretty consistently, right? So it's a little bit easier to hit shots when the boss is semi-close to you. Now, the problem is it's a little bit harder to hit shots when the boss is right above you or too close to you, which sometimes definitely happens here. Again, big thing is just getting to damage phase. Just like the last encounter, it's going to be there's no way you're not going to 3-phase. Again, you probably will be able to 2-phase, even without great aim, without great damage, without perfect setups. You can be able to 2-phase. You see there, we did over half damage. I missed half my shots. It's fine. You're gonna be good. You'll probably be able to 2-phase. I think every single run we've done so far, other than one, which was a really messed up first phase, has been a 2-phase. So definitely 2-phaseable. And again, you have 3 phases, so really set up for survival, set up for consistency, and you're gonna be in good shape. So as promised, let's go over the loadout very quickly here. So as I kind of already talked about, we've got Rat King, we've got Aberrant Action that we talked about last encounter with Heal Clip and Incandescent, and we've got Scintillation with Rewind Rounds and Bait and Switch. But again, we kind of already talked about pretty much any 3 burst linear with a damage perk is going to be beneficial. And again, if you're not the Rat King person, just use Queen's Breaker. Do make sure that for this encounter that you switch to particle reconstruction. Depending on your super and setup, you could either run defibrillating blast or limit break. If you're going to be doing kind of a lot of super damage, limit break may be helpful. Defibrillating blast will obviously give you more survival though, and again, survival is really the paramount thing here, so I'd probably focus more on these two than trying to fit in limit break, because you can only have 2 mods in this final, or 2 artifacts in this final Rite slot. Now, as for subclass, obviously you're going to want a well. Again, if you already have a well, you could potentially run a Song of Flame with it as well, but somebody's going to want to be in a well. As we talked about last encounter, Phoenix Dive, I love it. For the Speaker Sight build, obviously you're going to run one Healing Grenade and Touch of Flame for sure. Now, it is kind of an option between Icarus Dash and Hellion. I personally still like Icarus Dash a lot. It gives you some extra mobility to get out of danger quicker. Hellion does give you some extra damage and some potential extra just kind of offensive firepower, which is definitely good. Definitely either one is a good option. I think, again, either one's a good option. I just kind of end it there. Now, in terms of fragments, there are 2 basically must-have. Well, there's one must-have fragment, and then there's a second, like, pretty much must-have fragment if you're going to be running solar weapons. And the first one is Ember of Benevolence. This is just must-have. It's going to allow your grenade to come up infinitely faster when healing anybody through either the healing turret itself or through the heal clip on your Rocket Sidearm. Also going with Rocket Sidearm, again, assuming you're running a solar one, which I would very much recommend doing so if you are going to be on a solar warlock here, you're going to want Ember of Empyrean, as this is going to allow restoration effects to be extended every time you're getting kills with your Rocket Sidearm. So it's even more healing, really, really beneficial, really helpful. Now, these 2 middle mods are pretty open, I would say. I'm running personally Ember of Searing and Ember of Mercy. There is also Ember of Solace somewhere in here, which is another very good option as well. That's going to allow your restoration effects to have increased duration. Again, Radiant you don't really care so much about, but restoration, very helpful towards survival. As for the mods, kind of very similar to last encounter. Heavy Ammo Scout and Finder with Siphon for Solar, Solar Loaders. Again, 2 arc resist and a solar resist is what I'm running for this encounter. Again, I am still running a solar resist for the Acolyte grenades. I feel like they're still pretty dangerous. And obviously the arc resist for the wizard. Honestly, just the wizard. If you get hit by the main moths of the boss, you're dead. It's not for that. The other moths that like spawn on like the little enemies and stuff, those are okay, and they can help with that too. But it's mostly just for the wizard's damage when it's targeting you, like, because that hurts really bad. But this will at least help some. And then I'm running Recuperation and Strand Scavenger for Strand Scavenger. Did I say? I don't even know what I said. For my linear, again, if you're using a different linear, use a scavenger of that choice or of that type. And then I'm running Special Finisher for, again, ability to make more special and charging or holding armor charge. Other mods are pretty open. Now for damage phase, swapping same weapons, Powerful Friends Radiant Light, Strand Loaders for DPS, reloading my linear faster, triple Strand Surges, again for the damage of the linear, and 2 time dilations to extend the time of the surges being up. One option you can do if you are struggling for damage for whatever reason, or just really want to try to extra commit to the 2 phase, and I may actually start incorporating this tomorrow in runs, is swapping out your Speaker's Sight for a Sanguine Alchemy for the damage phase itself on the second loadout. Now, a couple things here. First of all, Sanguine Alchemy requires that whatever your heavy, like to get the damage boost from Sanguine Alchemy, which I think is about like 13 to 15%, because it's like 10% just base bonus plus an extra surge, which is I believe 25% instead of 22 when it comes to the triple surges. So, and I don't know if it's multiplicative, but it's like 13-ish% more damage with Sanguine Alchemy. But anyways, you do need to be on the same super. So like you'd have to be on Strand Super to get Strand bonus, or if you're running Queen's Breaker, you need to be on Arc Super, for example, when you have this second loadout set up. Now, obviously, 2 issues with that. Switching supers removes all your ability energy, but also switching exotics removes all your ability energy when it comes to not swap for this this current dungeon event. Now, that is actually perfectly fine, because, again, if you're running this current first loadout and you swap to the second loadout, as long as you've dropped the well first, that is fine, right? So that's going to be the really important thing you need to do. If you're going to do this, you're going to want to go ahead and, if you do use Sanguine, and honestly, I do this anyway. I drop the well first before swapping anyway, so that I'm like, safer in the well. But make sure you're on the first loadout, you're doing all your things, you get the damage phase, you drop the well, you come into your inventory, you swap to the second loadout, again, with Sanguine, if you save that in there, and again, making sure that your super swap is locked or saved as well, so that you're matching your heavy with your super on this second loadout. And that will allow you to get the benefits of Sanguine Alchemy, still have the well placed and down for the full 30-second duration. And again, when you swap back, the only downside of this is that when you swap back after damage phase, you are going to again lose all of your super energy and ability energy. So like the transition to the second round will be more dangerous and more difficult potentially, because you're going to have some downtime on those abilities versus, if you just do these two loadouts specifically, or any non swapped exotic, swapped supers loadouts, you'll have any ability energy you got during damage phase towards the next round. So, just keep it as an option. Consider it if you need more damage, or you just want to have that kind of extra damage. But again, my focus, survival, maybe focus on those things first.